welcome to CyberConnect. Let's start with the first questions for the guests. To begin with, could you briefly introduce your current position and describe your primary responsibilities in that role? Who would like to start?
I can start. Hello, everyone. My name is Matthew Chheng. I'm a digital forensic investigator in the cybersecurity sector. And I've been in this field for about 18 plus years. And a little bit about my responsibility. My work involves evidence collection, analyzing compromised systems, supporting legal and HR investigations. So we get a lot of the tasks from legal and HR for analysis of internet usage, emails, chats, etc. Requests to preserve or destroy data. Pretty much it. Thank you.
Hi, good morning. Well, good afternoon. I can go next. So my name is Daryl Brooks. I'm currently working in the performance management side of things, which is more closely on the governance side of cybersecurity. So I work with a team whose responsibility it is to track how CISA's cybersecurity division is meeting its performance measures and activities, which is set in this annual operating plan. The annual operating plan then feeds into the higher level long-term strategic plan of the entire agency. So besides that, I've been in the field for roughly 20 years on the federal side of things, and I've also have a background in identity access management, and I've dabbled a bit in some auditing work. Look forward to discussion this morning.
Hey, Andreae, you want to go next?
I think I have my audio fixed. Yep. Yeah, okay. Sorry about that. You can go ahead, John.
You sure? Okay. Good morning, good afternoon, everybody. My name is John McNicholas. Thrilled to be here. Most of my 22 years of cybersecurity experience have been in the federal, logistics, and financial sectors. I'm moving into the private sector to support a state government agency. Really looking forward to it. Most of my primary duties lately have been governance, risk, and compliance, risk RMF. I'm moving into the CMMC field. That's really going to take off. Everything going on with the defense industrial base and all the new regulations. So just, excited to be here and talk about my experience and help anybody in the field or looking to get into the field. Thank you.
Awesome. Hi, everyone. I'm Andreae Pohlman. I also go by Dr. Dre. I can't rap, and I do not have a doctorate, but it is legit. It's my X/Twitter handle, Dr. Dre23. And I currently work as a board of directors for the Women's Society of Cyberjutsu, a nonprofit focused on helping cybersecurity individuals advance their career, get more hands-on exposure to technology in cybersecurity. My background has been over the last probably 15 years in cybersecurity, ranged from public sector to private sector. Most recently, before taking on the board of directors role, I worked at Microsoft, working as an enterprise security executive, talking with CISOs and C-level and decision makers with security teams around Microsoft security. And before that, I worked as an incident responder, as well as focus heavily on recovery work, and have a span of exposure to helping Fortune 500 companies, both private sector and public sector, with cybersecurity solutions, from whether it be recovery work or response work to proactive work.
Wonderful. John, I'll get you back on the main screen in a second. You've just gone dark, so and Francesca will be right back. So as soon as she does, you're holding her spot. There she is. Okay, let me get everybody situated. There we go. Okay. Okay, next question is, cybersecurity requires constant upskilling. What are the ways you personally stay current that others who are starting out could easily adopt?
I can jump on this one. I was just watching a YouTube video about an hour ago. I think YouTube, podcasts, there's so many free resources anymore. I think it's one of the best ways. I've mentioned it so many times in these presentations, but there's a podcast called Security Now with, Steve Gibson. He's incredible. The podcast is great. It's weekly. It's about 2.5 hours. I get my ideas from there, some new stuff. I would say YouTube, but there's also Udemy. Costs a little money, but I think it's worth it sometimes. If you put it in your shopping cart, magically in the next couple of days, it turns to $10 instead of $20. So, and just cybersecurity organizations. I love how, Dr. Dre mentioned she does the volunteer work with the organization, and that's the local, not even the local, but those organizations, the networking. That's what keeps you fresh, and I think that's the best way to upskill. Thank you.
Yeah, I could go next. Well, anyone that follows me on LinkedIn knows that I'm constantly pursuing different certifications across technical and non-technical domains. What I typically do, I think of areas that I know little about, or those that are set to dominate our field, and I try to find foundational level certification trainings for them and build my understanding of said domains from there. So that's typically how I upskill and keep my my skills up to par.
Yeah, and I'll just add to that. I pretty much, dedicate about 15 minutes to 30 minutes a day, reading cybersecurity newsletters like SANS, Newsbite, or, following a respected practitioner on LinkedIn, see what's trending. That way you can stay on current.
Y'all took all the great ones, which I applaud you for, because yes, podcast. I'm getting some background noise, maybe on my side though. But I enjoy podcasts. I know you mentioned Security Now, John. I also really like Paul Asadorian Security Weekly. I agree with what Matthew was saying. Definitely trying to stay abreast on LinkedIn, see what my peers are up to, getting involved with nonprofits that have cybersecurity focus. I know Meetup is a great way to find local opportunities to learn. I know CISA has I live in Texas, so they have a North Texas meetup coming up. Going to conferences, honestly, are such a great way to get exposure, especially things like DEF CON and exploring the villages at DEF CON. Going to Black Hat, which is a little bit more expensive than DEF CON, are also a great way to just get briefings, learn, and exposure, as well as network. Networking is a really key piece to this. But those are the things. Oh, one last thought too on this note, because this is a little bit, even though I've had exposure to this in the past, I don't know if I really realize the value of this, but doing things like capture the flag. Hack the Box has a really great capture the flag. I think there's one called Mega, or either Meta CTF or Mega CTF. I think it might be Meta CTF, where they have like seasonal capture the flags where you can go test your cybersecurity skills out. And that is a wonderful way to get hands-on experience and learning opportunities.
The B-sides are also a great way. Andreae, you just popped that into my head. Yeah, talking about local meetings and conferences. The B-sides are somewhat affordable too. You're right. I would have loved to go on to DEF CON or Black Hat. I just didn't have the money, and my organization wasn't paying for it this year. So, but yeah, definitely, Hack the Box. But the B-sides are great. I know Philly has one. That's where I'm at. But most areas have them. And I think it was like $75. It wasn't bad. And it's real technical too, which is great, because I recommend anybody getting in, I think, jump into the technical pool first. Thank you.
But jumping off of that question, the technical and soft skills, if you had to recommend just 2 technical skills and 2 soft skills for beginners to master, what would they be?
I'll go ahead and go first. 2 technical skills. I definitely think one thing, we recently had a local conference here, and on the whole capture the flag, we had another challenge called KC7 Cyber Detective, and it was about threat hunting and building query language to threat hunt and find in their challenge kind of like the flags throughout it. So I definitely think having query language and learning how to find things in the logs that you're having to sift through as threat hunters and incident responders, because you're usually trying to find, you know, the breadcrumbs that make up the bigger picture of what happened in an incident. That's the first one that comes to mind. As far as soft skills, I'll see if I can think of another technical one that I think will be really good, but I'm going to move to soft skills. I think communication is huge. In all of the situations that I've been involved in when it comes to coming off of a recovery when a company has been completely ransomwared, and the incident responders have already been there and given the, you know, who, what, why, when, what, how, sort of what happened in that incident. The recovery folks will follow on and come help rebuild their environment. That communication skills, whether you're an incident responder or focused on the recovery work, is crucial. And a lot of it is a marathon versus a race and pacing yourself. So I'll stick with those 2 for now and pass it off to other folks. And I'll see if I can think of 2 more technical and soft.
I'll go next. I would say technical skills. I would say networking fundamentals, things such as knowing ports, devices, wireless protocols, etc. And then also knowing the Linux and PowerShell command line, because just being able to, you know, to have a fundamental understanding of how to search for things, or how to run certain commands like a mmap command, things of those nature. Those are fundamental as far as red teaming and blue teaming. And I would say, as far as soft skills, I would say the ability to kind of build off of what Dr. Dre was saying here. I would come from it from another angle and say the ability to communicate technical information to a high level audience. So, you know, sometimes, you know, we could get so into the weeds where, you know, we think everybody speaks our same language. So being able to take that technical language and reduce it down, so you could be able to explain it to like management or any decision makers, so they could be able to accurately know what's going on and make sound decisions based upon any discoveries. And then lastly, I would say adaptability, just being able to adapt to changing situations, different situations, because I mean, in cyber, things are always changing, and given our landscape today, with the prevalence of AI, it's ever changing with that as well. So being able to adapt to the ever changing environment of tech, and specifically cybersecurity.
Yeah, Daryl's got a great point with that. I had that one written down, adaptability. So yeah, that's huge, because you never want to hear that's not my job. I heard that before when I started out in my career. Oh, you know, the one person who was, you know, setting up identity and access management. We had a single point of failure, which that was the first time I ran into that term. But, you know, a lot of people came for reservists, came and they weren't able to get their accounts activated. And it was a single point of failure. And I remember hearing somebody go, that's not my job. So adaptability is huge. You want to learn from everybody else. You want to be able to back up each other, because there will be a time when somebody's out, God forbid, a family situation, emergency situations. You always have to have a backup. It's not if, it's when. And I would say curiosity too for my second soft skill, because you're always learning. You're always learning in this field. If you find yourself somebody who doesn't want to learn, or doesn't want to adapt, or take on new training, new courses, things like that, it might not be the field for you. And for the technical skills, I'd start out with programming, just basic skills, scripting, command lines, because you want to automate use AI, create some chat bots, do things like that. And you really want to try to automate, but the programming basics. And I'd also go with risk management. And I looked at it as a technical skill because you give it metrics, you give it numbers. Okay, what's the likelihood? What's our vulnerability here? What's our severity? You want to give it numbers, and you want to work with the business on that, because I love taking the security, what's going on security wise, and educating the business on it. Because why do they care about this? Why do they care about those silly emails, spam drills? Because social engineering is more and more prevalent. Look at what happened with the Salesforce. It wasn't directly Salesforce, it's the third party, the Drift AI software. But it all started with social engineering. And that's the thing where risk management, I think, is a great technical skill to do. Thanks.
Well, I'll just say ditto to all of those good answers. I think for me, take the technical side. I think understanding chain of custody is really important. Excuse me. And, just understanding, the flow of data, the flow of devices, and the protocols that comes with it. You're gonna find that very important and to understand, and you'll see that in interview questions again and again. And then the second technical skill set is probably imaging and evidence handling, because they'll want to know how you're handling all of that aspect of it, documenting. And then the soft skill side, I would say, clear, concise writing, because everything you put down, either your report, your email, it's going to be read by some executive or, lawyers, other stakeholders. So make sure you write really good, and use AI to proofread or, Grammarly, whatever you need, use it. And then to add to what John said, have a problem-solving mindset, and really the ability to just dig deeper and look for the more than just the obvious answer. Thank you.
I think that's awesome, Matthew. I think cybersecurity is so vast, and my first exposure to forensics was coming onto the incident response team. So the chain of command was huge, and like you said, the conciseness is huge. Just wanting to full circle come back, since I said I would bring two more. A little bit what Daryl was saying, and a little bit of what Matthew was saying of really getting familiar with the basics. And I think that kind of comes down to like immersing yourself and learning, like what John was saying, with the podcasts, reading articles, start to know the language. And also, like you said, leaning into AI is your friend. And I think this is where like being technical is very important. But with the advent of AI, it helps close the gap on technical. So your soft skills are going to be even more important. And just wanting to double tap, I think John alluded to this, lean into this as a team sport of cybersecurity, working together, collaborating with people. Yeah, really liked what John said about learning, and really liked what I think all three of you said about adaptability is so important in cybersecurity. I think that's like the number one characteristic that, at least when I was interviewing people joining various cybersecurity teams, was understanding how adaptable you are in these environments, because they are very stressful environments to be in, and you really need all hands on deck. So just that's all I had to say in addition.
Wonderful. So on to the next question. So once you land that first job, what should you do in that first 6 to 12 months to set yourself up for long-term success?
I could start off here. I would recommend to find a mentor on or off of the job, and not to just think in terms of your day-to-day duties, but research what your organization's long-term goals are and come up with some projects that can help push them towards those. Also, study your areas or processes and find ways to improve their efficiency. By doing these things, you'll not only be able to speak towards your own ability to do a job role, but also how you're an asset to an organization you're joining. And kind of building on what Dr. Dre just said about the adaptability, also becoming more of a T-shaped professional. So not just learning your job, but understanding some element of the job that other people on your team does. So in case you do have someone that's out, you're always able to serve as a backup towards what someone else's does, and expand upon your own growing skill set.
I can go next. I'll add to what Daryl said. I think the first 6 to 12 months, it's really important just to learn the business context of it, really know the company's mission, the risk areas, and get to know who your stakeholders are. Whether it be legal, HR, the IT division, or other departments that you're going to rely on and constantly collaborate with. And then early on, really look for a mentor inside your organization and just kind of document everything that you're doing. Document your wins, because it's going to help you in terms of promotions, and help you build your own personal playbook. And then volunteer for your organization's projects, or whether it's inside or outside. Get your name out there and just really hone down your skill set.
I like what Matthew said, and I'll build on that about volunteer. I have that. It's a great panel. We're all hitting the same chords here. Volunteer to take on responsibilities that others may not want to do. Sometimes it's not the sexy thing that, is going to help you out, or help with the backups, help the infrastructure team as they do a cutover overnight. Get that experience. Go into areas you're not used to, because it's going to show your management, it's going to show your coworkers, that you're a team player. I had somebody tell me one time early in my career, you never want to be seen as not a team player. And if you're ever in that group, you got to leave. You got to go if you can't improve that. And that always stuck in my head, because you never want to be in that group. You always want to be a team player, because it really is a team sport. Listen. And also listen. You want to see, because a lot of times I see security walk in a room with a big stick, and they walk in and go, we need to do this, this, and this. All right, slow down. What's the business? I personally think the most important security document is anything similar to a business impact analysis. What are we here for? If it's a financial institution, are we here for availability, integrity? Like, what's our most important thing? And make sure our IT systems are supporting that. And share the workload, and learn as much as possible about the other positions. But you want to be a team player, and the first 6 to 12 months, listen to the business. Thanks.
That all of these are great. I'm glad I get to go last, because I can kind of go off of what you guys already said and build off of it. Definitely agree. I know the question was around 6 to 12 months, but I also think like having 30, 60, 90 goals. And, I think they always suggest, when you get into a new role, put together a presentation of what your 30-day, 60-day, and 90-day goals are. And I think that just kind of builds upon those basics that you're trying to learn in that new role. And you might be overreaching. I think there's like a quote by Bill Gates that people, and you guys can correct me here, but people overestimate what they can accomplish in a year and underestimate what they can accomplish in 10 years. So I think kind of similar vein of the 30, 60, 90 compared to the 6 to 12 months. Written goals. One of my favorite quotes about goals is, a goal without a date is just a wish. So make sure you put dates down to your wishes, or each goal has a date, so you can achieve it. Knowing the basics of your job, knowing the objectives of your job, knowing the business, key metrics of your performance are things that you should know. And I think those are the core things that in the early infancy that you should hyper focus on for your role. I wrote down maybe certifications, but that is kind of a growth objective if you're very ambitious. But there are two things here. I think it's growth of your knowledge in your role at the company and the basics, etc., and growth of your brand. Matthew really hit a note that I really liked of like, reach out, volunteer. There is importance of people knowing who you are in your role. And I think the growth of your brand by leaning in, and I think, John, you even said it too, with finding opportunities to volunteer on the infrastructure cut overnight. You never know who is in the room and who's paying attention, and that can really lend to your career growth. Even, I think, beyond that first year, people will recognize tenacious and committed people as they're working in their roles. But yeah, lean into growth opportunities, whether it's internal, that's within your job description, lean into growth opportunities internal, that's not in your job description, and lean into growth opportunities that are external, like volunteering. I know this was mentioned before, but if you don't have a skill set and you want that skill set, volunteering can really open the door to making sure you can get that sort of experience.
Excellent. So cybersecurity is obviously quite broad. There's so many areas. There's SOC, cloud, forensic, governance. How can someone figure out which direction to pursue?
I would say start by finding either a training or a certification program that exposes them to the fundamental concepts of cybersecurity and has hands-on labs. By understanding what each role does and practicing some of those duties, that's going to build an understanding. And once someone has that understanding, they'll begin to discover what things they like and don't like, what things they can see themselves doing, what things they can't see themselves doing.
I'll go next. I think for me, I think look at your strengths and kind of find out what you really like. Like if you like love puzzles like me, then forensics makes sense because you're basically finding small data sets in a person's device or a mobile device, and you're building a story out of it. So, or you enjoy building, maybe go into cloud security, or you like patterns, maybe, you know, being a SOC analyst would fit you. And basically just talking to people in the field and in each of their niche and kind of clarify what you like and what a day-to-day look like for them. So if that makes sense.
I'll go next if you're okay with that, John. Okay. Yeah, I always struggle with this one because there are so many vast roles, and I always want to, tell people, hey, do what I did. But not every career path is the same. I think getting exposure, honestly, to help desk really helped, build my career in both IT and cybersecurity. And I thought that was a great way to kind of see a wide view. But I do like what Daryl was saying about pick a certification. Certifications are a great way to understand. I think also Daryl opened us up with the last question of, Bill, what do you do in the first 6 to 12 months? What I really liked was get a mentor and get different types of mentors. I think are very important. Having a peer mentor is very important. And I think this applies to both questions, really. A peer mentor and a technical mentor. Both, I think, can get you exposure to the different types of opportunities. And thirdly, you could get a career mentor for, long-term growth of where you would like your career trajectory to go. I think that follows up on what Matthew was saying too, just talking to different people and the different types of roles that are out there. If I hadn't gotten into incident response, I wouldn't have had the exposure to forensics and reverse engineering, which is like a newfound admiration of what you guys do. But lastly, a really nice framework, pun intended, is the NIST NICE framework that you can go to and check out the different type of workforce cybersecurity opportunities that are out there.
Yeah, you hit some great points. I love what you mentioned about different kind of mentors, because they'll open the doors. They can put introductions in with you. If you want to talk to the head of incident response, let's try to get some volunteer work. And you may have to, if you're doing this as part of your career, you may have to spend a couple hours off the books getting that experience, and that's what you need to do. So, but yeah, I love the idea of the mentoring, and just I recommend if try to get into a job that touches all fields. I love how Dr. Dre mentioned, the help desk, things like that, because I wouldn't recommend somebody, hey, I want to get into cybersecurity, jump right into forensics. I mean, Matthew can probably back me up here. It's pretty complicated. I don't think anybody just starts with forensics, and I wouldn't recommend it, because I think you need to learn the basics, such as Security Plus is a great certification. I think it touches most of the fields in cybersecurity. And if you're going to do something like forensics, as complicated and technical, you want to know how the other things work, because in security, you have to know, you might not be able to build an engine, but you should be able to check the oil. So that's really how it works. And you want to touch all areas to find out what you like and what you don't like. You want to find out what you don't like. That's just as important as finding what you do like. So yeah, I think the mentor and starting out in a position that touches most of the fields like help desk is a great idea.
And that's a really great point, John. I think not being afraid to lean into trying something new. I know I worked at Microsoft, and it's such a huge company that I got to hop around and try on different roles. And if it weren't for, having different job opportunities come up, like what we call the compromise recovery team or incident response, like that's what really, that sort of exposure, like you said, I got to learn what I liked and what I didn't, or what I liked and what I didn't like.
Good point.
I'll just add one more thing to that. I think wherever you're at, just kind of look for opportunities within your organization. Look for opportunity to grow, and I think you'll find your path. And networking, I can't say enough about that. If you love to network, you love talking to people, then doors will open up in the cybersecurity path for you.
And one other thing that just came to mind, I'm sorry. I did something called, I think it was collegiate cyber defense competitions. And it was like a whole weekend dedicated to red team, blue team, and all the colleges were the blue team trying to help defend the fictitious organization that was stood up for this whole event. And I thought that was a really great way to get exposure to a lot of different roles in cybersecurity. You had to wear a lot of different hats, so that's another idea.
Love all of that.
A question from the audience. For newcomers, do you recommend specializing early in a domain like cloud security or forensic, or is it better to build a broad general foundation first?
I would say broad, definitely broad, because they get so deep. You want to be able to see the full picture, even in technical areas such as SOC and cloud and engineering, things like that.
I would add, you have to understand the whole cybersecurity foundation, and just understanding the CIA and the NIST, getting that foundation and knowing the lingo is really important before you jump into a specific niche.
Yeah, I would definitely piggyback off of what they said. Try to start off as broad as possible. Find a job opportunity that covers a broad base, just so even if you have an idea, hey, I want to eventually specialize in that. Well, at least get yourself exposed to other parts of cybersecurity, because you just may never know. There may be some other part of it that may interest you, or at least build off of that basic idea of what you think you want to do, And also going back to like the previous question, those volunteer opportunities, if you have opportunity to help out with, say, if you know you're interested in cloud security, we'll find those volunteer opportunities first, because you never know, once you get kind of knee deep in it, you may find out it's not what it's cracked up to be or what you thought it was, and at least be able to have those skill sets to be able to pivot to something else, even if it's not the part of cyber you thought you wanted to get in.
And I love this question. I think it's great because I think a lot of cybersecurity is out there and very trendy to get into the field. And I'm so glad that I made the choice to get in the field back in 2010, when it was more up and coming. But, six, half a dozen or the other. Yes, I would err like my peers here on going broad. But if you are highly determined of, hey, I think forensics and I actually vibe, I think I could see myself doing this long term, you could have a huge advantage if you do lean into that. Say, I had a lot of friends go towards their masters in forensics, and that's kind of how they made their jump into cybersecurity. And they had a leg up with a lot more knowledge in that field. And now they're very specialized versus, I had a lot more broad. And then I jumped around. I have a very broad bandwidth of cybersecurity jobs and skills. So six, half a dozen or the other, if you know that you definitely want to do something like forensics or cloud security. And sometimes job opportunities, you might be pushed into one of these where it ends up having to be your job and your sole focus. So you might as well just lean into it while you have it. And if you learn to like it, you learn to like it. Going into cybersecurity was never or even IT, I tell people, was not a huge passion of mine. I liked gadgets growing up, but it wasn't like, oh, I want to figure out this really hard to solve complex problem that I bang my head on the desk of, like, why can't I fix this one bug or situation that I'm dealing with? It ended up being more of a learned passion. So maybe if you do end up going more specialized, if it was unwillingly for that individual that got put into that job doing cloud security, then hopefully it will be a learned passion for you too. Or you'll learn that you want to actually do forensics or something other.
We have another question, and that is, what is the best way to find a mentor?
I'd say the local networking groups. I would say Women in Cybersecurity is a great organization. ISSA, ISC2, ISACA, and even, at a go to a B-sides, things like that, and volunteering. And people, I've mentored people, and some organizations actually have mentoring programs, which is great. But I would go to the cybersecurity groups that are national and international, and try to find that way. Please, I'd love to hear everybody else's thought. I mean, the military has some good websites. If you're a veteran, they have some good, but yeah, I'm trying to think. I wish there were more good websites.
I agree with you. Start local, start with the ISC2/ISC squared, ISA, ISACA, those sort of groups. I think be bold in your asks. I love seeing the posts on LinkedIn saying, "Hey, I've been struggling to find a mentor. Is anybody that you could tag, or can you help me find a mentor?" Ask people, and it's one thing if you don't have the network of cybersecurity people. So if you don't have the network of cybersecurity people that you can reach out to and start asking and say, "Hey, if you can't, can you recommend somebody else who can?" Which is, I think, very key to remember in your ask. And also, if you ask somebody to be a mentor, you really need to be clear in your objectives, your timeline, your goals. Be very respectful to the mentor's schedule, etc. Be a good mentor. I'm sorry, be a good mentee, and you'll have a very good mentorship.
I'll piggyback off everything that's been said so far. The only thing that I'll really add is, yeah, I've been fortunate that the majority of employers that I've have had mentorship programs, and that's how I've been able to find mentors. But another way for those who also are enrolled in like degree programs or in academia is to look there as well, whether it's professors or anyone that if you're like in graduate programs or you have working professionals there that you may be able to kind of lean on to see if they can kind of help you as far as their own working experience and getting some guidance from them.
Fantastic. Jumping into the next question is, cybersecurity can involve high stakes situations and potential for burnout. What is one practice or mindset you use to manage stress?
Definitely, if you can afford to pace yourself, definitely look into meditation apps. I think meditation is helpful. Being on incident response where we were 5 days back to back and usually booked multiple times back to back, and working 16-hour days, so like very little sleep, very little downtime. I think you've got to work it in where you can work it in, where you have the ability to control taking the time off and taking the downtime that you need. And it's sometimes a hard skill for you to recognize that you need the time off. And I'm glad that you're asking this question. But, check in with your manager, check in with peers, and, fact check yourself of like, hey, do I seem right? Do you think I need some downtime? This has been my situation on this cybersecurity event that we've been dealing with, et cetera. Honestly, it's everybody's journey with burnout and high stakes situations are different, and it's going to be dependent on like what brings you reprieve and being able to manage stress.
Yeah, I think it's really important to have a good work-life balance. For me personally, I love to garden. I like to tinker with, repairing cars, and I love fishing. And so every time I get a chance or I'm stressed out, I'll go do these things. And I think it's important that you have a balance and kind of recognize that the work itself comes in waves. You're going to have slow times and you're going to have stressful times. And when you're having those stressful times, it's really important to take care of yourself, the eating right, getting enough sleep, going, exercising, and just maybe having some person that you trust that you can vent with. That has really helped me in my career. Just calling out that friend in the field that you can just vent with and tell them about your bad day.
Especially if it's a cybersecurity friend who can empathize.
Exactly.
I would just like, especially, I like what Matthew said about the work-life balance. I would just say create those boundaries for yourself and know when to turn it off. So when work is over, whether you have a family or not, you go home and just know when to turn it off and have extracurricular things that you're into. And not this, but what I'm saying is not even just relevant to work-related tasks, because even if you have like extracurricular things, like the question Reggie said, like capture the flag or you're upskilling or learning, knowing how to balance your time and knowing how to turn that off and to reprioritize your own kind of mental health or reprioritize hobbies, other things you like to do, so everything is just not cyber all the time. So creating boundaries and just kind of knowing when to turn it off and turn it back on.
Yeah, I recommend unplugging too. Get outside, because we're always connected anymore. I'm trying to be more conscious how much time I spend on my phone, how much time I spend in front of a screen, and just taking that time and setting up those boundaries. And I respect, my management knows, coworkers know, peers know they can call me on the off hours, but If it can wait till tomorrow, let's make it wait till tomorrow. If it's not critical, if Rome isn't burning, we'll talk at 8:30 tomorrow. We'll talk at 7 tomorrow. And you have to learn to prioritize stuff, because I always think in my career, earning a living, it's to support my family and spend time with my family and friends. And you don't forget about that, because you can't lose why you're doing what you're doing, you know, in the process. So yeah, I would unplug, get outside, and enjoy the tranquility of nature if possible.
That's why people love fishing. When you go fishing, you have no signal.
Absolutely, yeah. I love when I get out on a trail. Yep, no signal. I'm good.
Maybe we have time for a last question. What is a common misconception about your specific role, and what does the reality of your day-to-day work actually looks like?
I would say, as far as cybersecurity as a whole, that it's just all technical. So big part of my role, a lot of it is meetings and discussing a lot of problem solving, as far as tracking matrices, how we can have more clear outputs as far as what it is that we're measuring, how we're measuring success, those things of that nature. So it's definitely a strategic part of cybersecurity that may often get lost in translation when you're learning about the more technical aspects of things, such as red teaming, blue teaming. There's also that GRC part of it, where you have to think more strategically as far as your long term goals, even your short term accomplishments. I'll say that.
I think a common misconception, just in general, if you're in cybersecurity working, is that you're a hacker, that you can also hack into all the things. And although I'm sure we have a lot of different skill sets and can do our own different investigations, I think that is something, talking with friends and family. I know someone was, I don't even know, like getting harassed via text message, and they say, hey, can you track down who this is? And not realizing that there are lots of apps that can spoof numbers and text messages, where they're coming from, etc. So that's just one that comes to mind of a misconception.
Yeah, a big misconception, I think, is people think it's like, the TV shows or in the movies. It all happens within the hour. And in reality, it takes time, days, weeks.
Yeah, like what Matthew said, the TV shows and movies will kill me. They open up a command prompt, they're sitting there pumping in, I'm in. What do you mean you're in? Like, you just went against it, you're in the NSA's database? I mean, really? Like, are you kidding me? So yeah, I find that unrealistic. I would say the biggest misconception for me is just knowing the business, knowing your organization. It's the communication, because why are we here? Security really doesn't have a traditional return on investment. You need to do it. I mean, single sign-on's great. PKI's great. Digital signatures, that's the only real benefit. That's the quickest benefit, I think, off the top of my head, to security. Most of it's either security or convenience. Take your pick. But you want to work with the business, work with the organization. This is why we're doing this. This is why we need to put in the tickets. This is why we need to do configuration management. This is why we need to do disaster recovery. This is why we need to test our backups and keep them off site and not on our network, because if ransomware hits us and it hits the backups, we're dead in the water. Making sure the organization and the business knows why we're doing what we're doing, and keeping them in the loop, and making sure you're on those business meetings. You're on those meetings with the database administrators. You're on with the infrastructure team. Maybe sometimes you have nothing to say, but you're on them, and open up that communication so they know they can come to you when they have a situation, when they have a question. Yeah, it's just knowing what the organization needs.
And piggybacking off of what you're saying, it's a fine balance of security and business operations. And it's, if you have security all the way up here, there's no, you know, business operations, vice versa. So it's finding that balance along the way. But I think you said it perfectly earlier. It's risk management and understanding what risk management is. Are you willing to accept the risk of this for business operations if you don't place the security measures in place? So
absolutely. Yeah. There's always risk. There's always going to be risk. I remember I had an auditor one time tell me we shouldn't accept any level of risk. And I asked him, I was like, you're in DC, right? You drive the Beltway? They're like, yeah. I'm like, okay. Every time you get on 95, I-5, fill in the blank, there's always risk. You know, seat belts, speed limits, you know, airbags. They all determine it, but there's always risk. And we have to address that, make sure the business knows it. If I get a risk assessment, if I get a risk acceptance from a CEO, CISO, I'm good. I spoke my piece. Yeah.
I think the other part of it is, you know, you got to be flexible, be very organized, have a to-do list as you're going about your day-to-day business. Because if you don't, you're just going to get lost in all the minutia.
Especially for a forensicator like yourself, like there's just so many files and so many things to sift through. I definitely wanted to second tap that.
I think we have a time for one more last questions. What are the expectations that a manager would put on someone in the role doing computer forensics? Can be any role.
I guess I'll answer that since it's forensics. I think the expectation is that you know your tools. And, you know, there's a lot of tools, not all will work. And you understand that you're going to have to be flexible and transition. And manager expects you to, you know, meet their deadlines, but you also have to educate them in terms of, hey, this is going to take some time. A lot of times you got to educate the stakeholders and let them know how much time it takes. So my favorite answer to stakeholders, how long is this going to take? I need this yesterday. And my favorite answer, it depends.
And I'm trying to think of, like, at least in what little exposure I've had to it, CyberChef is a very popular tool, it seems like, in forensics. Would you say that?
Absolutely.
But here's another question. How would you define a good leader of a computer forensics team? Name 3 qualities the manager should have.
I think the 3 qualities for me is the ability to listen and give good feedback, whether it be constructive feedback, and really documenting your wins, because these little wins, either it's big or small, it's going to come in handy when you're changing jobs or you're looking for a promotion. Really learn how to document. Another quality I think is being able to mentor others, junior analysts, and kind of work alongside with them and help them out without being overbearing and not micromanaging, and trusting your team, and really learn how to pivot.
And I know this was specific to forensics, but just piggybacking off of what Matthew was saying for, like, say, an incident response team, because we always had there were managers, but for the team itself, there was a lead, there was the person who did infrastructure work, and then there was a forensics person, and then a reverse engineer. And in that lead, I would say somebody who would advocate for the team. And we talked about burnout earlier, and I think being able to advocate and make sure that the team is getting their needs met in order to operate at their prime, and have good efficiencies. I think also piggybacking off of something Matthew said, the ability to coach and coach people up is really important. And then also the ability to translate, because we talked about this, we can get in the weeds and talk about in our own little lingo, and the forensicators sometimes have their lingo, and the reverse engineers have their lingo, and the infrastructure people have their lingo. Being able to take all of that and effectively translate and communicate with executive level, I think is really huge as well.
Just want to echo everything that was just said, especially the advocacy part and the communication piece. I would say out of everything that was said, we want to talk universally across different areas of cyber. That is what's indicative of a good leader, in my opinion. It's just someone who advocates for their team and their group. Just kind of protects them from a lot of higher level drama, and then being able then to communicate, understanding how to speak the language of their team, and translating that up to upper management, like Andrea just said. And to me, though, yeah, those are two very important qualities.
John, do you would like to add something?
Oh yeah, absolutely. No, I wanted Matthew, since it was forensics centric. I would just say with the management, definitely, I think a manager should have experience in what their people are doing, what their team is doing, because I couldn't stand when I've had a manager in the military, civilian, why'd you do that? Well, I did that because of this, this, and this. And they would critique you on how you did it wrong, and you knew they didn't have any experience in it. And we had a manager one time, we had to stop from talking because they were making us look silly because they were talking to another department. And they were like, yeah, we got to, scan, do something. It wasn't possible. So definitely have that experience. And I like the part with the coaching, and understand and be empathize with your team, know what they're up against. Because I've had some great managers. I had a family situation one time. I came into work, I looked beat up, and they looked at me. They're like, you okay? And I just kind of opened up. I was like, well, I have a family member who's sick, this and that. And they're like, we're good. Why don't you take some leave? And I looked at them, and I was so appreciative. I came back twice energized, because if you invest in the people and they're in your corner, you're going to work twice as hard. So, I mean, I have a philosophy too, and I can teach most people anything. I know there's positions that, if you're a nuclear engineer, I get it. Okay. Yeah. You're not going to learn that on the job per se, but in all of us you've heard today, I guarantee we're not in the position we started at. We've all done, at least, I'd say on this call, just from hearing everybody, we've done 7 to 10 positions. And just by, our willingness to jump around and be open. And we had good leadership that moved us into other areas. Hey, I know you supported that identity and access management team during that break the other time. Let's move you over, because it all starts there. But yeah, support your people and know what you're talking about and get that good basis. Absolutely.
Exactly, John. Be a good human. Check in with your people. Check in with your peers and your colleagues. Goes a long way.
It sounds cliche, but when you hear businesses, our most important, Southwest, I think, says it, is our employees. Well, they used to say it before they got bought out, I think. But, it's one of those things that if you invest in those people, they will back you up, because I love it. I've been fortunate. 9 out of 10 of my managers and leadership have been fantastic. But I always laugh if it's 5:01 and you get a phone call from the manager you don't like, you're probably not going to take it. But I've had managers where I woke up in the middle of the night. Hey, what's going on? Okay, right on. I'm logging on. So that's a big deal. And I know we've all worked that. And employee turnover is killer. And I can't get with the organizations that don't get that. I've worked with some organizations that, oh, you know, nobody's been here more than 2 years. I don't want to work for them. Thanks.
Well, thank you everyone for being here. We unfortunately came to an end, but we're going to jump into our next session. So please follow us into the next session where we are highlighting new talent. And thank you everyone for being here, and it was great.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everybody.